I used to work at a Subway next to a liquor store along a busy road. I hated the job, but I was only working there to make some extra money. The customers were friendly enough, referring to me as the blue-eyed girl as we didn't have any name tags. On New Year's Eve last year, I was assigned to have a shift until closing time. My boss constantly said that our store was doing poorly in profits, so only one person would be working for hours alone. So instead of working with someone until 8:30 or 9 p.m., I would be alone from 6 p.m. until closing time, something that worried my mom. They didn't like the thought of me being alone in the store for that long. I didn't like the thought of it either, but what could I do? It was dead in the store since it was New Year's Eve. I started cleaning things early as I knew it would take a lot longer to get everything done without anyone else helping me. The door alarm would just go off when a customer walked in. I was in the back at around 9 p.m. when I heard the door alarm go off. We would be closing in just a half hour. I walked to the door to greet my unwanted customer, but surprisingly, no one was there. I didn't see cars out front, but I looked around the store briefly before returning to the back room. A couple of minutes passed and then I heard the door alarm go off again. I briskly walked to the front, but when I got there, I did not see anyone at the door. Instead, I found a man sitting on the far end of the store at the back table. Despite my irritation, I greeted him. He kept looking back and forth from wall to wall and occasionally out the window. He was fiddling with something in his pocket but wouldn't take it out. Most importantly, he didn't respond, and I was getting pretty annoyed. I told him to keep in mind that we'd be closing in 20 minutes. Again, no response. With an irritated sigh, I walked to the back room. When I went back to the front, I noticed that the man wasn't there anymore. He couldn't have left the store though, since the door alarm didn't ring. I wandered around and I noticed the bathroom door was partially opened, so I decided to peer through it. The man then emerged and stood there for a couple of moments. Then, for the first time, he looked me straight in the eye. This sent a chill down my spine. His stare was blank. He smiled and grabbed something from his pocket. It was a knife. I quickly ran outside and called for help. I caught the attention of a few people. I was crying and shaking. They walked back with me inside and found no one except a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. I reached for it and slowly opened it. The words on it still haunt me to this day. Subway, brunette, blue eyes. December 31st, 9 p.m. I closed the store early that night and I quit the next day. I told my mom about what had happened and she called the police. I gave them my description of the man, of his knife, and the note I had found. They told us that they'd do what they could to find him. Since then, I always feel as though I'm being watched. I still wonder about that note sometimes, but in all honesty, it's probably better for my mental health to forget about it. It was New Year's Eve of 2016, and I was spending it the way I always had, alone, curled up with a good book and a hot cup of coffee. It was only 9:45 p.m. and the neighbors were already setting off fireworks. I was expecting it, but it still startled me to the point of spilling my coffee. The holiday was just another day for me, and although I made it a tradition to stay up until midnight, I felt no need to spend it with friends or family. I liked the solitude and often felt awkward around other people. I grabbed a rag from a drawer in the kitchen and wiped off the spilled coffee. Just then, the phone rang. I thought it was just a family member calling to wish me a Happy New Year. I answered the phone and heard laughing in the background, but nobody replied. "Hello?" I asked again. Somebody then replied.
Is Thomas there?
It was a woman's voice. I still heard the laughing in the background. I answered, "I'm sorry, there's no Thomas here. You must have the wrong number." The person on the other end then hung up. I thought it was rude, but I ignored it and decided to go back in the living room. About an hour passed before the phone rang again. Again, nobody answered, but I could hear what seemed to sound like a party in the background. I heard glasses clanging together, music playing in the distance, and loud conversations. I then heard someone shuffling the phone about, and then nothing. As midnight approached, my eyelids started feeling heavy. I looked at the clock. It was 11:45. Suddenly, the phone rang again. I contemplated answering it. However, curiosity got the best of me and I answered the phone in an irritating voice. A loud noisemaker blasted in my ear. Then, a woman's voice appeared, and she spoke no louder than an angry whisper.
Happy New Year's, Thomas. You never thought I'd do it, but I will.
The woman laughed and breathed in deeply. Not knowing how to respond, I said, "Who is this? There's no Thomas here." The woman laughed again in the background, and before I could hang up the phone, I heard a man crying for help. And then there was silence. A chill ran up my spine and I looked at the clock. It was midnight, but I couldn't focus on New Year's when I was shaken to the core. Several fireworks erupted in the distance. I jumped at every one, holding my breath between every pop and snap, closing my eyes and counting the minutes when it would all be over. I decided to turn off the phone and go to sleep, but as my hand went for the off button on my phone, it rang once again. Hesitant to pick it up, yet too curious to leave it ringing, I answered the phone for a fourth time. I listened and didn't talk. It was the same woman, whispering violently.
Are you ready, Thomas? The time is now.
What then sounded like an air horn went off into the phone, and I dropped it to the ground. Although I was really scared to move, I checked through the windows and locked the doors. I then called the cops and reported the calls I had been receiving. I did not hear back from the case, but that was definitely the last time I have and will ever spend the New Year's Eve alone. It was New Year's Eve 3 years ago. I was watching Goosebumpster videos in the living room when I noticed movement through the thin curtains. It was really late and I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Either way, I peeped out to have a look. That's when I noticed a man in a black winter suit standing in our driveway, just staring under the moonlight. I couldn't really tell what he was staring at, but it was creepy, especially that late. I watched him for a few minutes until the man finally walked away. I didn't think too much about it and thought the man was probably just lost. The next morning, I told my mom about it. She was upset that I had stayed up so late, and then she asked if I'd been watching scary movies. Needless to say, I got the "it was all in your imagination" response. The day went on and my mom was cooking for New Year's Eve dinner. At around 6 p.m., she noticed she was missing a few ingredients and told me she'd go to the grocery store real quick. My dad was out shopping at the time, so I'd be home alone for a bit, but I was used to it. I was watching TV in the living room when I noticed movement through the window. My mom or my dad was back, I thought, but a few minutes passed and no one came inside. I thought that was quite weird, so I made my way to the window to see what was up. What I then saw scared me out of my wits. It was the man again, standing in the driveway at the same spot, not moving. I kept secretly spying on him to see how long he'd stand there. A few moments later, he suddenly started moving away. I breathed a sigh of relief. But while walking away from the driveway, the man stopped in his steps and rapidly turned his head and locked eyes with me, like he knew I was peeping all along. The man then started slowly walking back towards the house with his continuous stare. I choked in fear and ran for the telephone and dialed 911. I told them about the situation and they told me to hide ASAP until the police got there. That's when I ran upstairs to my parents' room, locked the door and hid in a ball behind the laundry bin in the closet. While running upstairs, I heard the front door handle jiggling, as if the man was aggressively trying to come inside and kept banging on the door. Good thing my mom had locked the door before leaving, I thought. The sounds suddenly stopped for about a minute, which led me to believe that the man had left. But I rejoiced too soon. A resounding sound of a window breaking clashed through the house. Heavy stomping was happening on the main floor as if the man was recklessly looking for me through the rooms. I then heard him making his way up the stairs. At that point, I was shaking like a leaf. But then all of a sudden, the steps paused. I listened carefully, but I couldn't hear anything. I then picked up the sound of police sirens in the distance. That's when the man rapidly made his way back down before slamming the door behind him. The cops then rushed in and yelled, "Police!" But the intruder had already left from the back door, leaving his footprints in the snow. The cops were able to capture the fugitive later that night, thankfully. We ended up patching the window that night and having our family dinner, despite being highly disturbed by the situation. It took me a while to get over it, and I still have the occasional nightmare once in a while. The least we could say is we ended the year with a bang. Do you have a true, personal, scary story to share? Send your 500 to 600 word horror story to goosebumpsterofficial@gmail.com. Please make sure you have well-structured sentences and grammar. Also, let us know how you would like your name to be credited on the video. Terrorize the like button and subscribe to the channel if you dare.
I'll see you soon.